I want you to try and visualize a number for me as we start today.
Okay.
1,200.
Right?
Now imagine that number represents an entire discography.
Yeah.
1,200 recorded songs.
That is just, I mean, that's a staggering figure. You're talking Prince territory there, Frank Zappa levels of output.
Exactly. And usually when you have that kind of volume, the artist is this global pop superstar, a household name in every country on earth.
Yeah, you'd assume so.
But today, we are looking at a man whose Wikipedia entry exists in nearly 90 different languages.
Yeah.
Yet, if you walk down a street in New York or London, you might not even recognize his face.
No, probably not.
He is known simply as the Emperor, or to his legions of fans, Aniki, which translates to Big Brother.
We are talking, of course, about Ichirō Mizuki.
Yes.
The man who didn't just sing for anime. He essentially built the infrastructure for anime music to even exist as a respected genre.
Right, and that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today into the life and just absolute wild legacy of Mizuki, who was born Yoshio Hayakawa. We've pulled from some really comprehensive biographical profiles, his extensive discography records, and reporting from Kyoto News on his final years.
Because there is a lot to cover.
There really is. And the mission for you listening today is to answer a very specific question. How did a struggling pop singer in the 1960s transform himself into this cultural pillar? A guy who could perform feats of physical endurance that would honestly break an Olympic athlete.
It's a fascinating arc. It's a story about pivoting, about sheer endurance, and really the difference between singing for children and singing down to children.
Oh, I like that distinction.
Yeah, it's about taking something that society considered completely disposable at the time and treating it like high art.
So let's unpack this early timeline, because when you hear a title like The Emperor of Anime Songs, you kind of assume he was born on the throne.
Right. You think it was destiny.
But looking at the sources, that is definitely not the case. He started out under his real name, Yoshio Hayakawa.
Yeah, this was back in 1968. He made his debut with a single called Kimi ni Sasajeru Boku no Uta. And if you listen to the descriptions of his early work, or if you manage to track down those rare recordings, it wasn't that burning justice style we know him for now.
Not at all.
It was standard pop rock and R&B.
He was trying to be a mainstream cool guy, basically, navigating the chaotic music scene of late 60s Tokyo.
And failing to be blunt, I mean, the late 60s in Japan was an incredibly crowded market.
Oh, yeah.
You had the group sounds boom, which was sort of the Japanese answer to the Beatles. You had folk music rising. You had enka. Yoshio Hayakawa was just another guy with a nice voice and a guitar.
Right.
The charts just weren't biting. He was drowning in the noise.
Which makes the pivot. And here's where the story gets really interesting, so crucial. In 1971, he changes everything. He releases Genji Shonen Riga Iku.
This was his very first anime track. And this is probably the first key insight for our listeners here. In 1971, Anison or anime songs was not a genre.
Right. It wasn't a career path?
Not at all. It was a gig.
It was basically a commercial jingle, right?
Precisely. It was viewed as completely disposable work. You go into the booth, you sing the intro for the cartoon, the kids hear it for 90 seconds, the show gets canceled after a year, and the song disappears into the ether.
Forgotten forever.
Exactly. Serious artists didn't stake their reputation on it. Honestly, it was often where failed pop singers went to pay the rent.
So Mizuki steps into this quote-unquote lesser arena, but looking at the source material, he clearly didn't treat it like a lesser arena.
No, he didn't. And that is the massive differentiator for him. When you listen to that 1971 track, and especially the stuff that came immediately after he brought this incredible operatic intensity to the performance, he treated the lyrics, even if they were about jungle boys or monsters, with the exact same gravity you'd bring to a love ballad or a national anthem. He respected the audience, even if the audience was 6 years old.
That gravity completely pays off in 1972. I think looking at his discography, we can call this the big bang of his career.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the moment the Emperor is truly crowned.
The Year of the Iron Castle, Mazinger Z.
Yes. Even if you've never seen the show, you know the sound.
That brass intro.
The brass intro, the driving beat. But let's look at the data here because it's fascinating. Mizuki didn't just sing the opening theme, did he?
No, and this is crucial to understanding how he actually built the Anison model. He became the entire sonic identity of the franchise.
Right.
He recorded the opening Mazinger Z, but then he also did the ending theme, the insert songs like Bokura no Mazinger Z and Soratobu Mazinger Z, and the Xeno theme.
So when you watched the show, you were just bathed in his voice.
Exactly. It creates this almost Pavlovian response. When a kid in 1972 heard Mizuki's voice, They knew a hero was arriving.
The cavalry is here.
Right. And because Mazinger Z was such a massive hit, I mean, we're talking about the show that basically codified the giant robot genre. Mizuki rode that wave. He wasn't just the guy singing the song. He was the literal voice of the pilot Koji Kabuto's burning spirit.
And the wave just didn't stop. We look at the rest of the 1970s, the Showa era, and his resume is ridiculous.
It's unbelievable.
It reads like a greatest hits of vintage Japanese pop culture.
It really does.
We're talking Great Mazinger with the tracks Oriwa, Great Mazinger. We've got Tekkaman, Kamen Rider X, which moves him into tokusatsu, those live-action special effect shows.
Right.
Steel Jeeg, Combattler V, and of course the massive space opera classic Captain Harlock.
What stands out to me about that list is the sheer ubiquity of his voice. If you were a child in Japan in the 1970s, Mizuki was the soundtrack of your childhood. You could not escape him.
You literally couldn't.
But this also brings us back to that number you mentioned earlier, the 90 languages on Wikipedia.
Right. How does a Japanese singer of robot songs get that kind of global reach before the internet even existed?
It speaks to how these anime shows were exported. In the 70s and 80s, shows like Mazinger Z Grendizer and Captain Harlock were sold to markets all over the world. Italy, France, Spain, the Philippines, massive parts of Latin America, and the Middle East.
And in many of those places, they kept the original music.
Well, often they kept the backing track and just dubbed the vocals for the main theme. But in many cases, especially with the background music or those insert songs we talked about, Mizuki's original voice remained in the broadcast.
Oh, wow.
Or the local performers mimicked his vocal style so closely that the whole Anison vibe traveled right alongside the show.
So you have kids in Naples or Mexico City or Manila growing up with Mizuki's melodies completely embedded in their brains, even if they couldn't pronounce his name yet.
Exactly. He became the soundtrack of childhood for a huge chunk of the global population. That's where the Emperor title comes from. It's not just marketing fluff. It's a reflection of his statistical dominance across borders.
But being prolific is one thing. Being a legend is another. And I want to fast forward here to 1999, because this is where the story shifts from a guy who sang a lot of songs to someone practically superhuman.
A 24-hour concert.
Yeah. Just saying it out loud sounds fake. It sounds like an urban legend you'd read on a message board.
It does, but it was very real. It was held at the foot of Mount Fuji, and it was fully televised on Fuji TV. To mark the end of the millennium, Mizuki decided to perform a 1,000-song marathon concert.
Let's just break down the logistics of that for a second. A standard concert is what, maybe 2 hours?
Yeah.
Maybe 20 or 25 songs, if the band is feeling generous.
If you're lucky. And usually the singer takes breaks. They talk to the crowd. They go off stage for a costume change while the band jams. Mizuki was on stage for 24 hours. He sang 1,000 tracks.
How is that physiologically possible? The vocal cords are a muscle. They fatigue. They swell up.
That's where his Iron Lungs nickname comes into play. He literally trained for it like an elite athlete. He had to manage his hydration, his breathing techniques. But I think the psychological aspect is actually more interesting than the physical one. Why even do this?
Yeah, why risk blowing out your voice forever?
Yeah.
You already had the legacy.
Because it wasn't just a stunt. It was a statement of endurance. Think about the characters he sang about. Mazinger, Captain Harlock, the Kamen Riders. Their defining trait is guts.
Right.
They never give up, even when they're broken, even when the robot is losing power.
So by performing this grueling marathon, he was embodying the actual ethos of the songs. He wasn't just the narrator anymore, he was the protagonist.
Precisely. It moved him into a completely different category of celebrity. He became a real-world symbol of burning spirit, and it proved that he still had the raw vocal power 3 decades into his career. He wasn't just some nostalgia act. He was a powerhouse.
Which is iconic because right after this massive solo flex, he does something surprisingly collaborative. He realizes the industry is changing around him and not necessarily for the better.
And this brings us to the year 2000 and the founding of Jam Project.
Right. Japan Animation Songmakers. Now, the sources frame this as a bit of a counter-revolution. What exactly were they fighting against?
They were fighting against the commercialization of anime music, specifically the tie-in culture. By the late 90s, anime had become massive business. Record labels realized they could use anime opening credits to just promote their newest J-pop boy band or rock group.
So you get a totally generic love song attached to a show about fighting demons just to sell the CD single.
Exactly. The song had absolutely no lyrical connection to the story. It didn't match the burning intensity of the animation. It was just a marketing vehicle. It felt hollow.
It lost that Mazinger soul.
It really did. So Mizuki and a few other absolute legends of the genre, people like Hironobu Kageyama and Masaki Endo, formed Jam Project to basically say, no. Anison is a specialized craft. The music should serve the show.
Yeah.
They wanted to create songs that were complex, powerful, and lyrically relevant to the anime they were attached to.
Almost like a trade union for superheroes.
That's a great analogy, actually. They wanted to preserve the spirit of the 70s, the horns, the shouting, the pure passion, but update it with modern metal and rock production values.
And Mizuki was the founder, the spiritual leader of all this.
Yeah.
Even though he eventually took a step back from the grueling touring lineup as he got older, he set the baseline tone. He legitimized the idea that Anison wasn't just disposable kid stuff, but a genre worth protecting.
And clearly it worked. If you look at the anime music landscape today, that burning style is still huge. Jam Project sells out arenas worldwide. Mizuki ensured that the lineage didn't just die out.
Speaking of lineage, we have to talk about the video games. Because there is a gap between the kids in the 70s and the modern audience today.
Yeah.
How did Mizuki bridge that gap?
Because he wasn't just relying on old folks buying DVD box sets.
2 words. Super Robot Wars.
The strategy game franchise.
Yes, so those listening who don't know, it's a massive video game franchise that mashes up dozens of different robot anime into one massive strategy game. You have Mazinger Z fighting alongside Gundam and Evangelion, and crucially, the game uses the original theme songs.
So a kid playing their PlayStation in 2005 is hearing the Mizuki track from 1972, but maybe it's re-recorded or remastered. Exactly. It created this amazing cross-generational loop. You had the grandfather who watched the original broadcast, the father who maybe saw the reruns on TV, and the son playing the video game. They all knew the song.
Wow.
It kept Mizuki relevant in a way that most 70s singers simply aren't. He wasn't a nostalgia act you found in a bargain bin. He was the guy singing the battle theme in the hottest video game on the market.
It's a brilliant way to diversify the delivery mechanism of his voice. But even Iron Men eventually rust. The sources take a pretty sharp turn around 2021, and this part of the story gets heavy.
It does. This is the final chapter of our deep dive. In 2021, Mizuki revealed he had partial vocal cord paralysis.
Which is a nightmare for a singer known for volume for that shout style. I mean, his signature move is literally shouting Z at the top of his lungs. Losing control of your vocal cords strikes at your very identity.
Most performers would have retired immediately, and no one would have blamed him. He was in his 70s. He had sung his 1,200 songs. He had absolutely nothing left to prove, but he didn't stop.
And then it got worse. Moving into 2022, lung cancer.
Diagnosed with lung cancer with lymphatic metastasis. The prognosis was not good.
This is what I found hardest to wrap my head around when reading the reports. He has a paralyzed vocal cord and lung cancer, and yet the timeline shows him on stage performing in late November 2022.
Yeah, he was in a wheelchair for some of his final appearances. He was visibly frail, but he insisted on singing. There's a moment described in the reports where he performs the Mazinger Z theme one last time. He couldn't hit the high notes perfectly anymore, of course, but he put every single ounce of his remaining life force into that microphone.
He passed away on December 6, 2022. Just days after that final stage appearance. He was 74.
He died with his boots on. Or, I guess, with his trademark red scarf on.
It really brings the whole Aniki persona full circle, doesn't it? We talk about how we embodied the never-give-up spirit during that 24-hour concert. But doing that when you're healthy is one thing. Doing it when you're dying, that's the myth-making stuff.
It validated everything he ever sang about. He wasn't a hypocrite. He told millions of kids to be brave and to fight until the bitter end, and he illustrated exactly what that looked like in real life.
The reaction to his death was massive. Based on the Kyoto News reports, we saw tributes from the Prime Minister's office, from fellow artists, but also just this huge outpouring from regular people everywhere.
And not just in Japan. We saw it in Hong Kong, in France, and Brazil. The Anison community is a global tribe, and they lost their patriarch. There was a private funeral held by his family, but the mourning was worldwide.
So when we step back and look at this entire 50-year arc, what are we really looking at? Yoshio Hayakawa, the failed pop singer, becomes Ichiro Mizuki, the emperor.
We are looking at the absolute triumph of the niche.
Go deeper on that, because usually we are told to broaden our appeal if we want to be successful.
Well, yeah, the conventional wisdom in entertainment is to go broad, appeal to everyone, be universally liked. Mizuki went the exact opposite way. He found a very specific, somewhat ridiculed niche, giant robots and superheroes, and he treated it with absolute respect. He dug a well so deep that he hit water that no one else could reach.
He didn't chase the trends after 1971.
Oh,
He
yeah.
became the trend.
Exactly. He proved that you don't need to be a generic pop star to have a global legacy. You just need to be the absolute best in the world at your specific thing.
That is a powerful takeaway. In an era where everyone is trying to go viral by doing whatever the algorithm wants today, Mizuki picked his lane and paved it for 5 decades.
And because of that, his voice is immortal. As long as there's a Mazinger Z or a Super Robot Wars, his voice will be there.
It makes you wonder, looking at the current landscape of music and content creation. We have stars who burn bright for 6 months. But who is the Ichiro Mizuki of today, who is building a body of work so specific, so dedicated, that in 50 years, people will still be listening to it in 90 different languages?
It's a hard question. Honestly, I'm not sure there is one.
Something for you to chew on as you go about your week. That is it for this deep dive into the life of the Emperor. Thanks for listening, and keep those playlists loud.